Hine Network 1 on YouTube.
DCPS Career and Technical Education.
I'm your host, Mackenzie Jones.
I'm your host, Timothy Stewart.
I'm your host, Daphne Hansfield.
And I'm your host, Luella Lombardo.
Did you know Eliot Hine Network has a new podcast in state-of-the-art studio?
Log us in on Apple,
iHeart,
Spotify,
Pandora,
Google,
Amazon Music.
Joining us as a guest on the show today is Miss Temple.
Our short topic today is mental health.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Our first segment is Understanding Miss Temple.
What inspired you to study mental health?
So, growing up, I did not have anyone to talk to. By middle school, I started feeling just lonely and sad, and there was a school counselor there who took me under her wing and changed my life. And I would not be here today without her. She checked in with me. She had sessions with me, and at that time, I didn't know that I needed that type of help. I didn't know anything about mental health, and so naturally, when I went to college, I said, I want to be that for someone in middle school who needs that type of support.
Thank you.
How do you handle mental health as an adult now?
So personally, I do a lot of boundary work. And what boundary work means is separating my work from home, leaving work at a certain time, not bringing certain work home with me, and also self-care. Do you guys know what self-care is?
Yes.
Why don't you explain it for...
No problem. So it means taking care of yourself, right? That means that getting rest you need, going to bed at a good time so that you can wake up and be 100%. That means eating breakfast. So on a really busy day, instead of skipping breakfast, making sure you get that meal intentionally. That means I do a lot of breath work throughout the day. So taking deep breaths, doing some belly breathing, checking in with myself to make sure that I'm okay throughout the day, because we do a lot of work with students and a lot of different things come up.
How did you handle mental health as a teenager?
How did I handle mental health as a teenager? That's a great question. And so at that time, I was checking in with my school counselor, and I didn't know what it was called, but she was doing therapy with me. And so I don't think that I really knew what mental health was when I was in high school. It wasn't something that was talked about a lot in my community or at my school at the time. And so she had me doing a lot of mental health work, but I didn't necessarily know what it meant. So how did I handle my mental health? I think she had me journaling at that time, checking in with my emotions, how I was feeling, really building confidence in myself. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Of course.
We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back.
Thank you again for having me.
Of course.
Our pleasure.
This broadcast is being brought to you by Eliot Hine TV on Ustream and the District Knowledge Network. I'm your host, Phoenix Monroe.
I'm your host, Montana LaFontaine.
I'm your host, Tamira Williams.
I'm your host, Medea Aguiman.
Our show topic today is mental health. Joining us as a guest on the show is Miss Olds, DCPS social worker.
Our first segment was Understanding Miss Temple's DCPS counselor. Our second segment is Why Mental Health is Important.
Why should young adults be aware of depression?
I think that's a really good question. Depression is something that I would say most, if not all of the population or human population at some point experiences. And we talk a lot about, we know what sadness is, but we don't always explain what the difference between sadness and maybe depression might be. But I think it's important to just be aware and to talk about the various feelings or states or emotions that we have as people. Sometimes we tend to just keep going, or sometimes we tend to not want to talk about some things. But again, it's a normal human experience for a lot of people. So I think being aware allows you to best handle or address the situation. How can you deal with something if you don't even know what it is?
How do you handle mental health without hurting yourself?
I think that healthy, or what we call coping skills, things that we do to just help ourselves, uplift ourselves, things that we do to calm our minds or calm our bodies. So journaling, right? Talking to a trusted adult, getting some physical exercise, and just going outside in nature. There are various things that we can do just to help our minds and help our bodies without necessarily harming ourselves. Now, there are some things that we may say are good coping skills and maybe not the best coping skills some of us may have, but I think there are different ways that we can manage or handle our mental health.
What are some tips to prevent suicide?
So I will say talking with a trusted person, whether it be an adult, a friend in school, right? Somebody that you trust with your emotions and your feelings. I know that talking about suicide can feel a little weird or different, or that's just something we don't talk about, right? But I want to say that having the conversation and talking about it is the only way, again, that we can really address things. If we sweep it, or we don't talk about certain things, some things just continue. But for you guys, I would, again, definitely recommend talking to a trusted adult, somebody that that you have a good relationship with, that you feel comfortable with talking.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
This broadcast is brought to you by Eliot Hine TV on Ustream
and the District Knowledge Network.
I'm your host, Mackenzie Jones.
I'm your host, Medea Agumon.
I'm your host, Cameron Smith.
And I'm your host, Daphne Hansfield.
Our show topic today is mental health. Joining us as a guest on the show is Miss Temple, a DCPS counselor.
Our first segment was Understanding Miss Temple.
Our second segment was Why is Mental Health is important.
Our third segment is How does mental health impact your daily life?
How should young adults try to handle stress day to day?
That's a great question. And young adults and adults, we all handle stress differently, right? And so it's also recognizing how your body responds to stress. And so I would say, as of right now, the best way to handle stress from day to day is also finding joy in everything you do, finding gratitude, finding the good things, even in the midst of chaos. And so today, my gratitude is that I'm here and I'm able to be here with you guys, and I'm able to do this show. Even in the midst of everything going on, today I have time to sit and be with you guys. And so finding joy in a stressful day is really, really important.
Yeah.
How should young adults try to cope with mental illness?
So the first step is understanding and acknowledging that there is a problem and you're not feeling well. And so making sure that you get help. Talk to someone. Sometimes adults think kids don't know, how they're feeling. And so if you feel like something's off and it's been persistent and consistent, then advocate for yourself. Say, hey, I need to talk to someone, whether it's in your school building, whether it's at home with your parents, saying, I need to talk to a mental health professional so that I can get the help I need. And so that is where I would start as a young adult coping with a mental illness.
Do you have any final thoughts for the students at Eliot Hine?
I would say I am very impressed with this team, and I'm glad that you guys are spending time today focusing on mental health because it is important. And so continue the good work that you guys are doing here.
Miss Temple, thank you for being a guest on our show.
Thank you for having me.
This broadcast is being brought to you by Eliot Hine Network 1 on YouTube.
DCPS Careers and Technology.
I'm your host, Daphne Hansfield.
I'm your host, Mackenzie.
I'm your host, Medea.
And I'm your host, Cameron.
Have a great day.